She needed a name to protect her child. He needed something to believe in again. What began as a lie to survive turned into something neither of them expected. But no one escapes the past out here, not even love dressed in a borrowed name. The knock wasn't nervous. It was calculated, rehearsed, like a woman who had no choice left but to act like she did. Naomi Bell stood straight-backed outside the sheriff's office, her son's tiny fingers laced tight in her own, her other hand trembling against the folds of her worn dress. She had only one chance left in this town, and it stood behind that wooden door. She knocked again. A pause, then boots. Slow, steady. The door opened. Levi Harker looked down at her with the kind of face that had long forgotten how to soften. Dust lined his beard, gray threaded through his temples, and his eyes were the kind that had buried things too deep to name. But he saw the child first, and that was something. Naomi spoke before she could lose her nerve. "I need a husband," she said, voice low but steady. "Just for the week, in name only." Levi blinked once, then again slower. "That's so." Naomi nodded. "I'll pay." Behind her, the wind carried the smell of smoke. Brush Creek was burning again, or maybe someone's barn had gone up in the heat. Either way, the air felt like it didn't want to hold her anymore. Her son shifted behind her leg, unsure but trusting. He was 4, too young to know what desperation looked like on a woman. Levi stepped aside. "Better come in before someone hears that," he said. Inside, the office was as sparse as expected. One desk, 2 chairs, a rifle rack, a badge tossed onto a crate instead of worn. He wasn't a lawman anymore, not really. Just a name folks still called sheriff because no one else had stepped up. Levi didn't offer her a seat. Naomi didn't ask for one. She stood, chin high, as her son pressed against her skirt. "I'm not asking for anything more than a signature," she said. "Just a paper trail. There's a man riding in. He says I took something from him. I didn't, but I don't have proof of that. What I do have is a boy, and I won't let him see me taken." Levi stared at her, unmoving. "What's his name?" "Eli," Naomi said without hesitation. "He's mine, and no, he doesn't have a father, not anymore." Levi crossed his arms. "You think pretending to be married will stop a man like that?" "I think it'll buy me time," she said. "And I don't need forever, I just need 3 days." Levi's jaw moved once, like he was chewing the inside of his cheek, thinking. Then, with a sigh so quiet it barely counted as breath, he reached for a blank page from a drawer, dipped his pen, and scratched his name across the top. "3 days," he said, "and you don't owe me a damn thing except the truth before they're over." Naomi's fingers tightened around Eli's. "That's more than fair." She signed her name beneath his, the ink still drying as she stared at it. Naomi Harker, a lie written in cursive. She didn't look at Levi when she handed the pen back. He didn't look at her when he took it. And that was how it began, an agreement signed in silence, desperation, and ash-scented wind. They walked to Levi's ranch in near silence. Eli clung to Naomi's arm but kept glancing up at Levi, studying him with that quiet scrutiny children had when they didn't know if a man could be trusted yet. Levi didn't speak to the boy, didn't reach for him, but he kept his pace slow enough for Eli to match. That, Naomi noticed. The ranch was small but standing, a miracle after the storms that tore through last fall. The porch sagged but didn't creak. Inside, the place was clean in the way men keep things when they live alone too long, rigid, cold, and without softness. There was one room with a bed, another with a cot. Levi gestured toward the smaller one. "Y'all can take that." Naomi hesitated. "You sure?" He didn't answer, just walked past, toward the kitchen, where a kettle already sat on the stove like it had been waiting to boil for years. She set Eli down gently on the cot. The boy sat cross-legged, blinking at his new world. Naomi sat beside him, and for a moment she allowed herself to breathe. That night they ate in silence. Levi made coffee and beans. Naomi offered to cook, but he waved her off. The kind of wave that didn't come from arrogance but from routine so old it had turned into armor. Eli didn't say a word. He didn't cry, either. He just held Naomi's hand until he fell asleep curled beside her on the cot. Naomi didn't sleep. Not really. She lay still, listening for hoofbeats, for the sound of someone coming to tear this illusion down. Her husband, a man she hadn't seen in 5 years, wasn't coming back, but the one chasing her, he was. When dawn broke, Levi was already outside splitting wood. Naomi stepped out barefoot, wrapping her shawl tight around her shoulders. The sun rose slow and heavy, the sky pale with early heat. She stood at the top of the steps, watching him, knowing what she had to say next would be harder than any of it. "I wasn't honest," she said. Levi didn't stop swinging the axe. "I figured." She swallowed. "The man coming, his name's Roan Carver. I used to work for his wife. After she died, he said I owed him, but I don't. He's just angry, dangerous, and I needed someone mean enough to stand in front of me." Levi split one last log, then finally turned. "And you think I'm mean?" "No," Naomi said, "but I think you look like you've been through hell, and I figured you might understand someone who's not trying to be saved, just trying not to drown." Levi looked at her for a long time. Then he set the axe down and said, "There's coffee." By noon, word had gotten around town that Levi Harker had taken in a wife. No one questioned it out loud, but the stares came just the same. At the general store, Naomi kept her chin up as Mrs. Keene narrowed her eyes behind the counter. "Harker didn't strike me as the marrying kind," the woman said dryly. Naomi smiled without warmth. "Neither did I." The lie spread fast, too fast. By the second day, half the town had stopped pretending it wasn't curious. Naomi tried to keep her head down, but Levi's name carried weight, and when a man like him vouches for someone, even liars get treated like neighbors. But it wasn't safety. Not really. Because by sunset on day 2, a rider came into town dressed in a black duster and a look that didn't blink. Roan Carver. He didn't ask questions. He just rode slow down the main street, eyes scanning porches, windows, alleys. Naomi saw him from the store's back door, heart slamming against her ribs. Levi wasn't with her. Eli was inside, unaware. She grabbed her son fast, ducking behind crates, whispering for him to stay silent. Her pulse roared in her ears. Roan didn't see her, not yet. But Naomi knew he would. And when he did, all the ink and paper in the world wouldn't protect them. Naomi didn't move for a full minute after Roan's horse disappeared down the alley behind the stable. Her hand was tight around Eli's wrist, her own breath coming in short, shallow gulps. She only let go when she felt the boy's small fingers shifting beneath her grip. He didn't cry, but the confusion in his eyes cut deeper than any scream. She stroked his hair once gently, then whispered, "We're all right." It was a lie, of course, but it was one he needed and one she needed to hear herself say. She waited until the sun dropped low before stepping out of the store's back room. Eli walked close at her side. She didn't see Roan again that day, but she felt him everywhere. In the way folks grew quiet as she passed, in the way Mr. Dugan, the stableman, fumbled with the reins of a horse he'd tied 100 times before. Everyone knew something, even if they didn't know what. Levi was waiting when she returned to the ranch. He stood on the porch with arms crossed, his expression unreadable but not unkind. He hadn't asked where she'd gone, but she knew he'd been watching the road, watching for her, watching for trouble. "He's here," Naomi said plainly. Levi didn't flinch. "Saw the dust trail," he replied. "Came in slow like he wants to be noticed." "He will be," she said, voice quieter now. "He doesn't do things quiet. He'll go through everyone just to make a point." Levi nodded once, then opened the door. "Let's go inside." The night passed in near silence. Eli fell asleep early, too tired from tension to fight it. Naomi sat at the small kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a chipped cup of tea that had gone cold. Levi didn't sit. He leaned against the doorframe instead, rifle propped beside him. "He doesn't know where you live yet," Levi said. "He'll ask around first, pay someone who talks too easy, maybe scare someone else into it." Naomi nodded slowly. He'll find us. Probably, Levi agreed. But we got time, and we've got something else. She looked up. What? He thinks you're alone, Levi said. He thinks you've got no one willing to stand. Naomi looked at him then, really looked. There was no bravado in his voice, no boast in his posture, just a man who'd lived through enough to know what could be endured and what shouldn't be. Why are you helping me? She asked, not for the first time but maybe with more weight now. He didn't answer right away. Then finally, without looking at her, he said, I had a son. The words hung in the air like a gunshot. Naomi's breath caught, not because of the confession, but because of how plainly he said it. Like it was just another fact, like the weather or the way dust settled after rain. He was 5, Levi continued. His name was Jacob. Fever took him before I could ride back from Jackson. My wife Clara buried him with her own hands. She never forgave me for not being there. I didn't either. Naomi said nothing. There was nothing to say. I don't pretend much anymore, Levi said. But if pretending to be your husband keeps that boy from growing up with your kind of fear, I'll do it until my last breath. She could have cried then, should have, but the tears didn't come, just a tightness in her throat that didn't leave for a long time. The following day brought no confrontation, only shadows. Roan made himself visible around town, speaking politely, shaking hands with storekeepers, offering coins for conversation. Naomi knew the game. The kindness was a knife still in its sheath. Back at the ranch, Levi taught Eli how to hold a hammer. They fixed a crooked gate, then patched a chicken coop that hadn't seen hens in months. Naomi watched from the porch, her hands idly sewing the hem of a torn apron, but her eyes never left them. Something about seeing her son so open, so unaware of danger for once. It softened something in her, even as it scared her more. After supper, as the last light slipped away, she sat with Levi beneath the stars. They didn't speak for a long while. The air was still, thick with the kind of silence that doesn't press down, it holds. I think he's waiting, she said finally. Levi nodded. He's trying to see how afraid you are. I'm terrified, she admitted. Good, he said. You'll be careful. Naomi turned to look at him. Aren't you afraid? Levi's jaw clenched slightly. I've already lost everything once, he said. Fear's just a reminder that there's still something worth protecting. Naomi exhaled slowly. That sounds like something a man says after burying too much. It is. That night she dreamed of water, flooded rivers, rising faster than she could carry Eli away from. She woke up gasping, sweat on her brow, the world still dark. But she wasn't alone. Levi sat in the corner of the room, half-shadowed, rifle across his lap. You don't sleep, she asked. I do, he said, just not when I'm needed. The next morning, it all unraveled. Naomi stepped into town for flour and salt. She left Eli with Levi at the ranch. She told herself it was safer that way. She told herself she'd be quick. But she hadn't been inside the mercantile 5 minutes when she turned and saw Roan standing at the door. He didn't speak, just smiled. It was the kind of smile that told stories no man should ever be proud of. Naomi froze, hand on the counter, voice caught somewhere behind her teeth. Fancy town you found, he said, his drawl slow and syrupy. I've been looking for you. I've got nothing of yours, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Roan took a step forward. Now that ain't true, Naomi. You took 5 years of comfort, 5 years of loyalty. That counts for something. I worked for your wife, she said. Not you, and she's gone. Roan's eyes darkened. She is. And you know what she left behind, me. Alone. You think I was gonna just let you run off with nothing after everything you saw, everything you knew? Naomi shook her head. I didn't take anything. Oh, he said with a low laugh, you took something all right. The room felt suddenly too small. Naomi turned, grabbed the small bag of flour and moved toward the door. Roan stepped aside, but his voice followed her like smoke. "I'll be by the house tomorrow," he said. "Might as well make this real official." Naomi didn't look back. She didn't run. She didn't breathe until she was halfway back to the ranch, the weight of his threat sinking into her chest like lead. When she got there, Levi was already on the porch. He saw her face and said nothing, just opened the door wide enough for her to walk through. Inside, Eli was playing with wooden blocks Levi had carved the night before. He looked up and smiled. "Ma, look," he said, holding up a crooked tower. Naomi nodded but didn't speak. She dropped the flower on the table and turned to Levi. "He's coming tomorrow," she said. Levi's eyes narrowed. "Then we get ready." The storm didn't come at dawn the way Naomi expected. It came with the sun already high and the wind dry, quiet. Roan rode up the path slow, like he had all the time in the world, his black duster flowing like a shadow that wouldn't let go. Levi stood in front of the house before the first hoof met gravel. He didn't reach for his rifle. He didn't move at all. Roan dismounted with a casualness that chilled Naomi more than if he'd come in wild and screaming. The man didn't need noise. He'd done enough to carry silence like a weapon. "Well," Roan said, adjusting his gloves with a calm grin, "this must be the place." Levi said nothing. Naomi stepped onto the porch, Eli behind her, peeking through her skirt folds. Roan saw the boy and tilted his head. "Didn't know you had company," he said to her, though his eyes didn't leave Levi. "I'm married now," Naomi said. She forced the words through a throat that wanted to close. "You're on my husband's land." Roan's grin stayed sharp. "Is that what we're calling it?" Levi's voice came low. "You heard her." The air between them cracked, not with sound but with the unspoken things that could come next. Roan turned slowly to face Levi directly. "You're the one signed that paper." "I am," Levi said, "and I don't make a habit of lying." Roan raised a brow, studying him now like a man might inspect a faulty fence post. "Not sure if it'll hold. Not sure if it's worth tearing down." "Well, hell," Roan said, smiling wider. "She always did find someone to clean up her messes." Levi didn't blink. "You calling her a mess is what makes you the kind of man I won't be inviting back." For a moment, Naomi thought the man would swing. Roan's hand flexed at his side. But instead, he let out a long, exaggerated sigh and turned to Naomi. "3 days," he said. "That's how long I'll be in town. I expect this little lie to unravel by then, or I'll do the unraveling myself." He turned, mounted, and rode off slow, same as he came, as if he'd already planted a fuse somewhere and was waiting for the fire to catch. Naomi sank into the porch rail, her knees weak. Eli crawled into her lap. Levi stepped inside without a word. She followed him, heart still pounding. "You think he'll leave?" she asked. "No," Levi said, "not without something he wants." "And you believe me, that I didn't take anything?" Levi looked at her then, long and measured. "If I didn't believe you, I wouldn't have signed my name next to yours." That night the air grew still again. Naomi couldn't sleep. She moved through the dark house like a ghost, watching over Eli, listening for horses. At one point she found Levi outside by the barn, a lantern lit, sharpening a knife with slow, deliberate movements. "He's going to push," she said softly. "I know," Levi replied. "And you'll stand in front of it." Levi paused. "If I can't stop him with words, then I'll stop him with my body." Naomi's voice cracked. "That's not what I wanted when I came to you." "But it's what you got." She sat beside him on the rough-cut bench outside the barn. For a long time they didn't speak. Then she whispered, "Clara was lucky. I hope you know that." Levi's eyes flicked to her, then back to the blade. "She died hating me." "I doubt that." "I don't." Naomi watched his hands as they moved, slow and careful. "You ever wonder what you'd have done different?" "Every day." "Me too." She meant it. She wondered if she should have stayed, if she should have gone west instead of south. If she should have told Roan the truth the moment he cornered her, that his wife had died with fear in her eyes and bruises on her ribs, and Naomi had seen it all. But she hadn't said it, because truth didn't always save women like her. Sometimes it got them buried. On the second day, the fuse Roan had set found its spark. Levi returned from town with his jaw tight and his knuckles red. Naomi didn't ask what happened until he'd taken off his coat and set it carefully on the hook by the door. Mrs. Keene told him Eli looks nothing like me, Levi said, voice flat. Naomi's stomach turned. She always talks too much. She talks to survive. Most people do. Naomi sat at the edge of the table, her hands tight in her lap. What else? He's been asking about land titles. Wants to know how long I've owned the ranch, trying to prove something false. Is he getting close? Levi looked at her the first time all day and something behind his eyes flickered. Not doubt, something worse. He doesn't care if it's true. He just wants people to believe it's not. Naomi nodded slowly. So the town turns on us. Or stands back when he comes. That night the town did worse. At the saloon, Roan told stories about Naomi's past, about debts she owed, about a child born under suspicious circumstances. He smiled while he did it, bought drinks for the loudest mouths, and made sure the room laughed when he did. Levi sat at the edge of it all, not drinking, not smiling, watching. When one of the ranch hands from a neighboring spread stood too fast and knocked over a glass, Roan leaned in and whispered something. The man laughed, nodded, then turned to Levi. Don't see what you're protecting, he said. She's just a stray in a nice dress. Levi stood, slowly, not in anger, in decision. He walked to the bar, met Roan's eyes, and said calmly, If I hear one more word from your mouth about that woman, I won't ask you to leave. I'll make you. Roan's smile dropped a fraction. You really think she's worth all this, Sheriff? Levi didn't flinch. I buried my boy with my own hands. I know what worth is now. There was no fight that night, but the town watched different after that. When Levi came home, Naomi was awake waiting. She didn't ask what happened. She could smell the whiskey on his coat from across the room. Not from him, he never drank, but from the men who did. Their opinions, their heat, their doubt. You should let me go, she said quietly. This isn't your burden. Levi sat across from her. I don't let people walk into fires just because they're not my family. I'm not your family. You're wearing my name. Her throat burned. I didn't mean to make this real. But it is. The next morning she found a note nailed to the porch post. No signature, just 6 words carved into the wood with a dull knife. You'll burn with her, Harker. Levi pulled the nail out with calm fingers and tossed it into the fire. Naomi watched the paper curl and blacken. What if he doesn't stop? She whispered. Then we don't either. The days that followed stretched thin, tight, like the string of a bow drawn back too long. The air around town changed, subtle at first. A glance too long here, a door that didn't open as fast there. Naomi could feel it most in the silences, in the way conversation stopped when she passed, in the way smiles slipped behind tight lips. Folks were watching, listening, waiting. And Roan Carver hadn't even done anything yet, not out in the open. That was the worst part. He didn't need to. The threat of him did the damage for him. Back at the ranch, Naomi tried to keep things normal for Eli. She made bread that didn't rise properly and read him stories he barely followed, but he laughed when she used the silly voices, and that was enough. Levi carved a small horse from pine and gave it to the boy without comment. Eli named it Henry and carried it everywhere. At night, Naomi heard him whisper to it like he used to whisper to her belly before he was born, soft and sweet, like he believed in magic. She couldn't bear to tell him the world didn't work that way. Levi kept to his routine. He repaired fence rails and checked the water lines, stacked firewood though spring was warming. He moved like a man preparing for winter even when the sky said otherwise. Every night, he oiled his rifle without speaking, and Naomi knew better than to ask if he was hoping he wouldn't need it or expecting that he would. On the fourth day, Roan made his move. Naomi was out back hanging linens when she heard hooves, too close, too sudden. She turned just as the front gate creaked. Roan was already dismounting, dust on his boots, a smirk already carved across his face like it had never left. He walked up the porch like he owned it. "Afternoon," he called out like it was a courtesy. Naomi stepped between him and the door, chin high. "You're trespassing." He tipped his hat. "Just paying a visit." Levi wasn't in sight. The barn was too far. Naomi knew she had to stall to buy time without flinching. "I told you to stay away," she said. "And I told you I'd be back." Roan looked around, eyes sweeping the porch, the windows. "Real cozy here, better than you had with us. Guess being a whore pays better these days." The word landed like a slap. Naomi didn't move. "You say that in front of my son and I'll bury you myself." Roan laughed. "He's not your husband, Naomi. I've spoken to the clerk. There's no record of a preacher, just ink and panic." "You're not after truth," she said. "You're after control." Roan stepped closer, too close. "I'm after what I'm owed." "You're owed nothing." Behind her, the front door opened. Levi stepped out, rifle slung low but loaded, steady in his hands. "You done?" he asked Roan quietly. Roan turned, slow and easy, but his eyes were sharp. "Not yet." Levi descended the steps like he had all the time in the world. He didn't raise the rifle, didn't even aim it, but it was there between them, heavy and honest. "You're not welcome here," he said. Roan smirked. "You planning to shoot me on your porch, Harker?" "If it keeps you off it," Levi said, "yes." There was a long pause, one of those breaks in time where anything could happen and all of it would leave something broken behind. Roan stepped back, just 1 foot, and raised his hands mockingly. "Fine," he said, "but this isn't over, not even close." He turned, mounted his horse, and rode out slow enough to make it clear he wasn't finished. Naomi didn't breathe until the dust had settled. Levi turned to her then, his face unreadable. "I won't always be there in time," he said. "I know. You need to be ready." "I am." That night she sat on the porch while Eli slept. Levi joined her after locking up the barn. Neither of them spoke for a long time. "He won't stop," she said eventually. "No," Levi agreed. "And the town won't step in, not unless he puts a hand on me in front of the mayor. That's how they've always worked." She looked at him sideways. "And you, how do you work?" "I shoot last," he said, "but I don't miss." She smiled at that. It wasn't a full smile. It was tired and full of fear, but it was real, and it was enough to hold her together. The next day brought more whispers, but worse than that, it brought questions. Not from strangers, but from folks who used to nod when they passed her in the street. Mrs. Keene stopped her outside the post office, eyes narrowed. "That man says you lied. That Levi's not really your husband." Naomi's voice was low. "And what does it matter to you if he is or is?" "You think folks want trouble in this town again?" Mrs. Keene snapped. "We just rebuilt the schoolhouse. People are tired of fire and guns." "So am I," Naomi said, "but I didn't bring it. I'm just trying to survive it." She walked away before the woman could answer. She didn't need to hear it. She'd heard it her whole life. If trouble finds you, it must be because you deserve it. That evening when Levi came back from the feed store, his jaw was tight again. "Roan's getting bolder," he said, "spreading talk that I'm harboring a criminal." Naomi sat at the table, Eli in her lap. "What kind of criminal?" "Says you stole from his wife, that there's gold hidden somewhere." Naomi laughed bitterly. "There wasn't even enough money to pay me my last month. Gold." "Doesn't matter. People love a story more than they love facts." Levi looked at her then, really looked. "There anything you haven't told me?" "No," she said, "nothing that matters." "I need everything, Naomi." She hesitated, then spoke. She was pregnant when she died. Roan said it wasn't his. I think he killed her for it. Levi's face darkened. You think or you know? I saw the bruises, the way she cried, the way she begged me not to leave her alone with him. That's not nothing. It doesn't change what's coming. No, Levi said, but it means we don't wait for him to knock again. She looked up sharply. What do you mean? I mean it's time we stop pretending. We're just waiting out the storm. Levi spent that night drawing maps, lines through backwoods, markers of who might help, who wouldn't. He sent word to an old friend, Nash Carter, a marshal-turned-rancher who owed him a favor from a lifetime ago. If anyone can talk law into this mess, Levi said, it's Nash. Will he come? Naomi asked. He'll come, Levi said, but we have to hold out one more day. That night Naomi stayed up late by the hearth. Levi was outside, walking the edge of the property with his rifle. Eli was asleep, clutching the carved horse in one hand and Naomi's kerchief in the other. She stared into the fire, thinking about how fast a lie could become a lifeline. She never meant to stay this long, never meant to let Eli get attached, never meant to let Levi become something more than a name on a paper. But here she was. And here he was, watching her from the doorway, quiet as a shadow. You okay? He asked. No, she said, but I'm not leaving. Levi stepped into the room, the firelight catching the edges of his face, softening the lines that grief had carved so deep. Good, he said, because I think tomorrow we stop hiding. Dawn didn't bring peace, it brought smoke. Naomi smelled it first, something acrid on the wind, faint but rising. She shot up from the cot beside Eli and ran barefoot to the front door. Levi was already on the porch, rifle slung over one shoulder, his eyes tracking the ridge to the east. A thin plume of smoke curled upward into the sky. Roan, she asked, heart hammering. Levi didn't answer right away. Then he turned toward her, jaw set. Barnes gone. Naomi felt her knees weaken. Hours. No, Waller's 2 miles out, but Roan's making noise now. This ain't a whisper campaign anymore. He's pushing people to act. Naomi didn't speak. Her arms went instinctively around Eli, who had appeared silently beside her, barefoot and still blinking sleep from his eyes. She pulled him close, her palm flat against the back of his small head. Is the fire coming here? No, Levi said. Wind's wrong for it. Naomi let out a slow breath, but it did nothing to steady her. You think he did it? I think someone did it for him. That's worse. The town was tense when they rode in. Levi took the reins while Naomi held Eli tight on her hip. The faces they passed weren't cruel, just wary, suspicious. People who knew something was coming but didn't want to be caught standing too close to it when it did. At the mercantile, no one met her eyes. At the sheriff's office, the door was shut and locked, though it was barely past mid-morning. Naomi felt the noose tightening, not around her neck, but around her life, around everything she tried to build since running. Levi stepped into the saloon just before noon. The place was loud with forced laughter. Roan sat at the center of it all, legs kicked up, glass in hand like he owned every nail in the walls. His coat was dusted with soot. He smiled when Levi walked in. Sheriff, Roan said lazily. Heard there's been trouble with fires. Can't say I'm surprised. This land's dry. People get careless. Levi didn't move closer. He just looked at the barkeep. You pour for arsonists now. The laughter died fast. Roan rose, smooth and slow. Careful, Harker. Accusations like that can start their own kind of fires. You burned Waller's barn. I was in town all night. Levi's voice was quiet. Doesn't matter. You lit the match when you opened your mouth 3 days ago. This place has always been one bad idea away from falling apart. Roan stepped forward. You threatening me, Levi? No, Levi said. I'm telling you the fire's coming for everyone. even the men who think they're holding the torch. There were no punches, no drawn guns, not yet. But when Levi turned and walked out, he felt the weight of eyes behind him, watching, calculating. The town wasn't siding with Roan, not exactly, but it wasn't siding with them either. And sometimes that silence was the deadliest kind of choice. Naomi was waiting outside with Eli, standing near the horses. She didn't ask what happened inside. She could tell by Levi's face that no victory had been won. "They'll listen to Nash," Levi said as he mounted. "He coming before nightfall if he rides hard." They left the town behind without looking back. Back at the ranch, the air was still, too still. Naomi moved through the house like a woman bracing for a blow she couldn't see but knew was coming. She packed a small bag for Eli, her hands trembling only when he wasn't watching. She didn't tell him why. She didn't have to. Levi saddled 2 horses and left them tied behind the barn, just in case. He filled canteens, counted bullets, reinforced the window latches. Naomi watched him from the doorway. "You really think he's coming tonight?" "I think he's realized the town won't throw us out. So now he's thinking about what he can take instead." Naomi crossed her arms. "And what do you think he wants most?" Levi met her gaze. "To take you back or burn what you've built." Naomi looked toward the porch where Eli played with his wooden horse, running it along the railing, humming to himself. "Then I'll leave. He wants me, not the boy, not you." Levi stepped forward fast, voice sharp. "No, that's what he wants you to believe, that leaving protects us, that you're poison, you're not. I'm not worth the risk. You're not the one starting the fire, you're just the one standing in its light." Naomi turned away. "He's done this before, you know, to other women, to a cousin of mine, Sophie. She ran, he followed. She took her own life in Colorado, he said it was grief." Levi's voice was soft now. "It was." "No," Naomi said, "it was." Evening came like thunder with no sound. The wind picked up. The dust in the yard stirred but didn't rise. Eli went to bed early without asking. He curled beside Naomi and fell asleep with his thumb in his mouth, something he hadn't done in months. Naomi lay beside him, fully clothed, boots on, heart tight. Levi sat at the table with a lamp burning low and his rifle on his lap. Neither of them spoke. Outside, the dark stretched too long. Then came the knock. Not at the door, at the window. Soft, deliberate, the sound of confidence wrapped in cruelty. Levi was on his feet in a heartbeat. Naomi sat up, hand flying to Eli's shoulder. Another knock, then a voice. "Naomi, we're leaving now." She froze. The world went silent inside her. Eli stirred beside her, but she pressed a finger to his lips. "Come out quiet," Roan said. "Spare the boy a memory he don't need." Levi motioned her toward the back. Naomi didn't argue. She scooped Eli up, blankets and all, and moved fast through the kitchen, out the rear door. Levi followed after checking the front one more time. Behind the barn, the horses waited. Naomi mounted with Eli in front of her, shaking but steady. Levi handed her the reins. "I'll slow him down," he said. "You ride to Carter's ranch, 15 miles northwest. You'll see his windmill first." "I'm not leaving you." "You have to." "Levi." "I know," he said, "but if he sees you, he wins." Naomi's breath caught. "What if he kills you?" Levi leaned in close. "He won't." She wanted to believe that. She wanted to believe he couldn't, but she knew Roan, knew what he was capable of. She reached for Levi's hand, gripped it tight. "You're not just pretending anymore," she whispered. "I know," he said. "Ride, Naomi." She did. She rode hard into the night, into the cold wind and darkness. Eli held tight, his face buried against her coat. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Behind her, the ranch disappeared behind the pines. And Roan Carver stepped through the front door Levi had left unbarred, pistol drawn, smile curling wide across his face. Roan moved like a man already sure of the ending. He pushed the door open slow, like he didn't expect resistance. One bootstep at a time, he crossed the threshold, scanning the darkened room with a predator's calm. The rifle on the table sat untouched. The fire in the hearth had burned low to embers. No movement, no sound, just the faint smell of ash and coffee and something else, something off. His voice came smooth, like silk wrapped around a knife. "Levi Harker," he called out, "you ready to bleed for a woman that don't love you?" Silence. Roan took 2 steps deeper, scanning the shadows. "She left, you know. I saw the horses. You sent her off like a scared little bird." Still nothing, then a whisper behind him. "She's not scared anymore." Roan turned fast, gun raised. Levi dropped from the rafters like a ghost, boots catching the edge of the table as he landed hard, knocking the pistol from Roan's hand with a bone-rattling strike. The gun skidded under the stove. Roan lunged, fist catching Levi in the ribs, but Levi didn't stagger. He absorbed the blow and drove his shoulder into Roan's gut, sending both men crashing into the chairs by the hearth. Wood cracked, flames hissed, and the cabin exploded into violence. No words, no taunts, just fists and breath and the sick sound of bone meeting flesh. Roan was strong, no doubt, but Levi fought with something deeper, something quieter and older. The kind of strength that grows in a man who's already lost everything and has nothing left to give but the last, ragged pieces of himself. They rolled across the floor, knocking over the lamp. Glass shattered, oil spilling. Flames licked across the plank floor. Roan broke free and dove for the stove, grabbing the pistol. He turned, finger on the trigger. But Levi was already there. He tackled Roan again, both men slamming into the wall. The gun fired once wide, cracking a hole in the doorframe. Outside, coyotes scattered from the sound. Inside, Levi drove his fist into Roan's face once, twice, until blood coated his knuckles and Roan slumped to the floor. The fire climbed higher. Levi staggered up, coughing, dragging Roan's limp form across the floor and out the front door. Smoke followed them like a scream. He dumped Roan in the dirt, panting hard. His coat was scorched on one side and his left arm hung stiff. From the ridge, a second horse approached. Levi turned, heart hammering. But it was Naomi. It was Marshal Nash Carter. He swung down from his horse fast, eyes wide at the fire behind Levi. "Damn it, Harker," Nash said. "You trying to barbecue him?" "Just trying to stop him," Levi rasped. Nash knelt, checked Roan's pulse, still alive barely. "I got your message," he said. "But hell, you left out the part where the whole place burns down." Levi didn't smile. He was going to kill her. "And now?" Levi looked back at the cabin. "Now she's safe if I'm lucky." Nash nodded grimly. "I'll take him into custody. Arson, attempted murder, assault. That should hold." Levi grabbed his saddlebag, ignoring the fire spreading behind him. "Won't matter if he slips it. I need to find her." "You know where she went." "I told her to ride to you." Nash's mouth tightened. "Then she ain't coming. I've been out in the northern ridge all day, no sign of her." Levi froze. "She never made it." "No." That stopped everything. The fire, the pain, even the wind. Levi felt the floor tilt. "She should have passed you," he said, "hours ago." Nash shook his head. "You think Roan wasn't working alone?" Levi's hands balled into fists. There was no time to think. He turned toward his horse. "Levi, wait. You're burned, you're bleeding." "I'm going," Levi snapped. "They could be anywhere." He mounted hard, turning his horse west without another word. The moon was high now, a pale silver plate in a dark sky full of wolves. Naomi didn't feel the blood until it soaked through the side of her dress. Not a deep wound, just a long cut across her ribs where the brush had clawed her as she rode too low through the gully. She didn't stop. Couldn't. Eli was still pressed tight against her front, barely breathing. his hands tangled in her coat like rope. She hadn't seen another soul in miles. The trail Levi said would lead to Carter's ranch was gone, washed out by an old rockslide or never real to begin with. And then came the hoofbeats behind her. She'd known immediately they weren't friendly. They didn't call out. They didn't show their faces, just chased quiet, steady, like dogs let off leash. So she turned, took the riverbed, dropped low, kicked up mud, and prayed they'd follow the prints wrong. For a while it seemed to work. The hoofbeats faded, then the horse stumbled. She and Eli tumbled hard. She hit first, arms out. He cried out, but it wasn't sharp, just scared. The horse limped, unable to go on. Naomi dragged Eli and the bag into the underbrush, hidden beneath the twisted roots of a fallen pine. She hushed him with the same lullaby she once sang when he was sick in Arkansas, words broken by the cold and by fear. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, she couldn't tell. Then came footsteps. Not hoofbeats, boots. She curled tighter around Eli, her breath held. The crunch of someone stepping through leaves drew closer, then paused. And then came a voice she hadn't expected. Naomi. She sat up fast, too fast. Her vision swam. Naomi, it's me. Levi stepped into view, covered in soot and blood and sweat, but alive. Naomi sobbed once, then pushed up on trembling arms. How did you? Carter said you never came. I rode the back trail. She fell into him, not gently, like a body collapsing. He caught her, cradled her, hands moving gently to check Eli. He okay? He asked. Naomi nodded, tears streaking her face. Just tired, just scared. Like his mother, Levi said, voice low. Naomi laughed, a broken sound, half sob, half relief. You're bleeding, he said. So are you. He grinned, just barely. Guess that makes us a match. They didn't speak for a long time. They just held each other, Eli between them, while the trees swayed above. Eventually, Levi stood and hoisted Eli up. Carter's got Roan in custody, but he's got friends still. We need to move. Back to town. No, Levi said. Not yet, too much noise. Then where? He nodded toward the ridge. I know a place. The cabin was little more than a ruin. Levi hadn't been there in years, not since Clara's death. But the stone fireplace still stood, and the walls were enough to keep out wind. They lit a fire with old pine branches and wrapped Eli in a blanket. He slept near the flames while Naomi leaned against Levi's shoulder. This isn't how I thought this would go, she said quietly. How did you think it would? I thought I'd stay 3 days, fake a few smiles, then leave before anyone got hurt. Levi didn't speak. But you got hurt, and you stayed. So did you. Naomi looked at him. Do you regret it? Levi shook his head. I regret waiting this long. She blinked. To do what? To let myself hope again. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of firelight and healing and something that hadn't yet been spoken out loud. Naomi leaned in, pressing her forehead to his. I'm not pretending anymore. Levi's voice was a whisper. Good. She kissed him then, not in desperation but in choice, in something real. Outside, the forest held its breath. Inside, 2 broken people began to stitch something whole. They didn't sleep much that night, not from fear this time, but from the weight of everything finally settling. Naomi lay curled beside Eli with Levi not far, the 3 of them forming something wordless and fragile that hadn't existed before the fire, before Roan, before the lie that was no longer a lie at all. The wind scraped soft fingers across the shutters of the ruined cabin, and the fire popped gently in the hearth, as if even the flames had agreed to keep still just a little longer. By morning, Naomi woke to find Levi already outside, leaning against a fence post that hadn't held a rail in years, his face turned east where the sun was pushing pink and gold through the clouds. She stepped out barefoot, pulling her shawl tight around her, and joined him without a word. For a long moment, they just stood like that. "He'll come again," Levi said finally. She didn't ask who, she didn't need to. "He'll try." Levi's mouth twisted. He's got friends in the hills, people who owe him, people who fear him. Even if Carter holds him a few days, it won't last. The law out here's got more cracks than teeth. Naomi nodded, but her voice was calm when she spoke. "Then we stop running." Levi looked at her. "You sure?" "No," she admitted. "But if we keep hiding, we'll never stop. This won't be the last man like him. Won't be the last lie we have to tell to survive." He didn't smile, but something in his eyes shifted. Respect maybe, or pride, or something deeper. They spent the rest of the day restoring what they could. Naomi swept out the cabin, gathering dust and broken glass from years of abandonment. Levi patched a shutter with old fence boards. By noon, they had a fire strong enough to cook beans and enough clean water to last the week. It wasn't a home yet, but it was becoming something close to it, closer, maybe, than either of them had dared to want. Eli helped too, in his own way. He gathered sticks, pointed out birds, tried naming the stars once night fell. Naomi watched him while stirring a pot of thin stew and felt a kind of ache she didn't know how to name, like her heart had finally remembered what it was supposed to be doing. But peace, real peace, never held long. It was the second night when the quiet broke. Levi had gone to check the horses just past dusk. Naomi was inside, tucking Eli under an extra blanket when the sound came, low, distant, but unmistakable. A rifle crack. One shot. She froze, heart stuttering. Eli stirred. "Mama." "Stay here," she whispered. "Don't move." She grabbed the lantern and stepped onto the porch. The sky was cloud-thick, the moon only a ghost behind them. Her eyes scanned the dark, then she saw movement down the slope. A figure limping fast toward her. Not Roan, Levi. She ran to meet him halfway. "What happened?" He waved her down, breath ragged. "They're coming, 4 of them. Saw their fire half a mile off. I clipped one, but not enough to slow them." Naomi's blood turned to ice. "Roan." "Didn't see him, but they ride for him, no doubt." She pulled Eli from the cabin in seconds, wrapped him in the shawl in her arms. "Where?" Levi pointed west. "There's a hollow maybe a mile out. Good cover, you stay there." "And you?" He shook his head. "I draw them, lead them the other way. It's the only chance." Naomi's grip tightened. "No, I'm not doing this again. We stay together or not at all." "We won't outrun them, Naomi. Not this time." She didn't blink. "Then we don't run." Levi stared at her, jaw clenched, torn. "You're not a fighter." "No," she said. "I'm a mother, that's worse." A silence passed between them, hard and final. He nodded. They moved fast. Levi took the high ridge, rifle slung across his back, pistol at his hip. Naomi helped Eli crouch in the root cellar under the cabin, just deep enough, just dark enough. She kissed his forehead, held his hand, promised him it would be okay. She didn't know if that was true, but she said it anyway. Then she stepped out and took her place beside Levi, just as the firelight from the riders crested the edge of the woods. They came without fear. 4 men on horseback, faces half hidden by scarves and shadow. One rode ahead of the rest, a hat pulled low and a lantern swinging from his saddle. He dismounted with a grin like poison and shouted toward the cabin. "Levi Harker, we heard you're hiding a thief and a liar." Levi stepped from the trees. His voice was cold. "You're on my land. That makes you the only criminal I see." The man didn't flinch. Funny thing about land, it stops being yours when no one comes back alive. "Then I guess you better ride home." The man laughed and raised his rifle. That's when Naomi shot him. The blast echoed like thunder. The man spun and dropped, his rifle slipping from his hand before he hit the dirt. The horse reared and bolted. The other 3 scrambled, caught off guard. Levi didn't hesitate. He dropped the second one with a clean shot to the leg. He screamed and fell sideways, disappearing into the brush. The third dismounted and fired wild, missing both Naomi and Levi by a mile. The fourth man froze, eyes wide. Levi called out, "You fire again and you don't ride home." The man hesitated, then dropped his gun and raised his hands. "Don't even know why I came," he muttered. "Roan said it'd be easy." Levi moved toward him slow. "Where is he?" "Town jail. Said it didn't matter. Said folks like you don't last. Said no one stop him when he walked free." Levi's mouth was tight. "You tell him he was wrong." The man nodded fast, mounted again, and rode off without a backward glance. By morning, only one man was left in the dirt. The first, the one Naomi had shot, was dead. She didn't cry. She sat on the porch with Eli in her lap, shaking only when the boy wasn't watching. Levi stood beside her, jaw clenched, eyes scanning the tree line like ghosts still lingered there. "You killed him," he said quietly. Naomi didn't answer. "You didn't flinch." "I flinched after," she said, "just not before." He looked at her for a long time. "You didn't lie to me." "No. You said you'd stay." "I did." They didn't speak again that day. Instead, they buried the man in a shallow grave beneath the pines. Levi marked the spot with a plain stone and nothing more. Naomi watched, hand clutching Eli's like a lifeline. The wind carried no judgment, just dust. The next afternoon, they rode into town. Together, people stopped to stare. The marshal met them at the edge of Main Street. "Roan's gone." Levi frowned. "What?" "Deputy said he got into a fight last night. Cell key went missing. He vanished before sunup." Naomi's stomach dropped. "Someone helped him." "Looks like it," the marshal said, "but I got men watching the tracks." Levi shook his head. "You'll need more than watchers." "I know." They didn't stay long, just long enough to see the town's face change again, this time not with suspicion but with something slower, respect, maybe even shame. Mrs. Keene passed Naomi near the general store. She didn't speak, but she didn't look away either. That was something. They left town before nightfall. They weren't ready to settle there, not yet. But something had changed. Naomi rode beside Levi now, not behind him. Eli sat between them on the saddle, giggling as the wind hit his face. They didn't speak of Roan again. But Naomi knew. He'd come back. And when he did, they'd be ready. Spring didn't come softly. It came hard and fast, breaking winter's back with a surge of color and warmth that rolled through the valley like a long overdue answer. The thaw turned the ground to thick mud, swelled the rivers, and pushed new green shoots through the earth before anyone could stop to question the change. The land, for all its cruelty, had started to bloom again, and so had something in Levi and Naomi, something that had once been stitched together out of necessity, now quietly becoming choice. The cabin on the ridge no longer felt temporary. Naomi had scrubbed every inch of it, whitewashed the stone hearth, patched the holes in the roof with strips of burlap and tar. Levi built a porch where there had been nothing but broken steps, and Eli helped him dig fence posts for a pen they hadn't yet filled. It wasn't a home made from dreams. It was one built from dust, sweat, and a few truths that had nearly killed them to admit. They'd expected Roan to return. They watched for him every day, checked the trees, watched the trail for new boot prints, but weeks passed and no one came. At first that made it worse, uncertainty twisting tighter than any confrontation ever could. But as the silence stretched longer, something else started to grow, the sense that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't coming back. Naomi didn't trust it, not fully, not yet. But she allowed herself moments. Moments like waking up with Eli snoring softly between them, sunlight slicing across the quilt, and Levi's arm draped over her waist without apology. Or the way Eli would race to Levi before breakfast, not like a visitor, not like someone borrowing space, but like a boy greeting his father. And Levi never corrected him, not once. Still, the past had a long reach. It was near the end of April when Levi rode into town alone to check on supplies. Naomi stayed behind, tending the garden she'd begun near the stream. The air was warm and thick with bees, the kind of day that makes you forget you ever knew danger. Eli splashed in the shallows, humming tunelessly, chasing his own shadow. Then a rider came up the ridge. Not fast, not loud, just steady. Naomi froze, one hand still buried in the dirt. Eli didn't notice at first. He waved at the stranger like he'd wave at anyone. That's when Naomi saw it. The way the rider leaned too far to one side, the coat too clean, the hat pulled low over eyes that never scanned the trees. Roan. It wasn't possible, it shouldn't have been possible, but it was. He stopped his horse just outside the fence, one hand resting lightly on the saddle horn, the other holding a letter. Naomi moved in front of Eli so fast she knocked the spade from her hand. Her voice came out low and sharp. "Go inside." Eli blinked. "Mama." "Now, Eli, inside, don't argue." Something in her tone made him obey. He ran for the cabin, the door swinging shut behind him with a hard slam. Roan dismounted slowly, like he had all the time in the world. His smile was as thin and cruel as she remembered. "You look good, Naomi. Domestic doesn't suit you." She didn't speak. He held up the letter. "Thought you'd want to read this. It's from your sister, or was it your cousin? I forget. You left a long list of people behind when you ran." Naomi's heart pounded. "You followed her." "I follow what's mine." "I'm not yours." Roan shrugged. "You used to be. That don't disappear just because you got a new man and some borrowed land." Naomi stepped back toward the cabin. "Leave." "I came to talk." "You came to finish what you started." Roan's smile deepened. "You shot me, Naomi. Took my man's life. Took my face from the county and turned it into a story. I can't walk into a saloon without someone flinching." "Good. Not for you." He stepped forward. That's when Levi returned. No warning, no hoofbeats, just sudden presence, horse still steaming, eyes burning, rifle already cocked across his saddle. He didn't shout, he didn't ask questions. He just dismounted. Naomi felt everything slow. Roan saw him, and for the first time something flickered. Not fear, not exactly, but caution. "Sheriff," Roan said evenly. "I'm not a sheriff anymore." "Then maybe this is just between me and her." Levi stopped just behind Naomi. "No, Roan, it's between you and us. You gonna kill me in front of your new family. Real brave." Levi didn't answer, he didn't move, his hands didn't shake. Naomi stepped forward, surprising even herself. "You came here thinking you de-scare me back into the life you broke, but I'm not that woman anymore." Roan's voice hardened. "You think this ends with you telling me no?" "I know it ends there." Roan reached for his gun. And Levi shot him. It was clean, fast, not angry, just final. Roan collapsed in the dust, hands still wrapped around a pistol he never drew. Levi exhaled once slowly, then holstered his rifle. Naomi stared at the body for a long time. "I thought it'd feel like a victory," she whispered. Levi shook his head. "It's not, it's just an ending." She looked at him. "You'll be wanted for it." "Carter will understand. I'll explain it." "And if he does?" Levi took her hand. "Then we go together." She didn't argue. They buried Roan near the base of the hill, far enough from the cabin that no one would trip over him again. There was no stone, no marker, just dust to dust, as quiet as the man had been loud. A week later, Carter rode up with 2 deputies. He sat with Levi on the porch and asked only one question. "You sure it was self-defense?" Levi didn't answer. Naomi did. Yes, she said. I watched him die trying to kill me. Carter looked at her, then at Eli, who sat on the step carving a piece of wood with a pocket knife Levi had given him. The marshal nodded. Then I saw nothing. And that was the last they heard of the law. Summer came with storms, fast and violent, but they passed quickly. The fence got built. The garden grew. Naomi sold her first batch of preserves at the general store in town, and no one looked at her sideways. They started calling her Naomi Harker without asking. One day, while Eli was fishing in the creek with a stick and a length of twine, Levi came up behind her on the porch. He held something small. A ring. Naomi stared at it. You're serious? I'm not pretending anymore either. She took it. She didn't cry, but she smiled so wide it hurt. And when she kissed him, it was the kind of kiss you only give to someone who found you in pieces and stayed long enough to help gather each one. They married on a quiet Sunday. Just them, just Eli, just the wind moving through the trees. No guests, no music, no past. Only now. Only family.